Hey folks, Technivorous here. Welcome back to my Beginner for 3D Printing in 2025 playlist. Today we're going to go over some of the basic settings. Now, as you can see, I've already got my model in here. I've been making these videos back to back, even though they're not coming out that way, but let's see. I drag and drop, you bring your model in, okay? This object needs to be either a 3MF or, in my case, an STL. I will show you where to find files in a later video. It's pretty easy to find models. You can pretty much get them for free anywhere, and you can make your own, obviously. We'll go over that in another video, as I said. But for now, go ahead and drag any model you may have onto the build plate. If you don't have one, check out www.thingiverse.com. Pretty much all those models are free. You can download them and use those here. Let's go ahead and take a look at what we're doing. So let's just go through these one by one and kind of explain what the minimum settings do. This says resolution. That is basically your quality. That's why it says standard quality here, and it is set to 0.2 millimeters. That means that each layer that the printer prints is going to be 2 millimeters high. Now, the larger this number, the larger the layer height, which means you're going to see larger lines and they're going to have deeper grooves, but you're going to print a lot faster. So if you reduce this number, you will get finer layer lines and it will take longer to print, but you will end up with a much nicer print. That is not true in 100% of cases, but it is true for 99 of them. So the next setting we're going to take a look at is infill density, and I'm going to go ahead and slice this. It's pretty quick. We'll jump over to preview mode, and as soon as it's done, we can slide down in and look at the infill. Okay, so right now we are using a pattern that is called cubic, and you can see what the cubic pattern looks like. It is basically just triangles of varying sizes, which create triangles and little tetrahedral boxes in there. There are other settings. Now, you won't have all of these because some of these I've made myself, and some of them are other ones that come with them. But I know cross comes with it, grid comes with it. That's a nice easy one. Cubic, octet, I believe zigzag. I know lightning does. Honeycomb as well, I think. Now, I think they added that in one of the later versions. And you can see how that works. It is just a honeycomb. So whatever pattern you choose, it is going to alter the amount of filament you're using, but not by much. The way to make it denser is the infill density here. And if I increase that to 70%, that means 70% of the object is going to be filled in. And you'll see that it's a much smaller honeycomb now, right? If I want to go all the way up, get it really fine, and really make a solid object, I can do that. I have the infill density at 90% right now, and you can see that, like I said, they're way finer honeycombs, right? So basically this shrinks and enlarges the pattern, but the smaller the pattern, the more filament it uses to fill it, so it fills more space, which makes the object heavier, and we are now up to 14 grams, when down here at 20%, we were at 8 grams of filament, I believe. So we've over doubled our filament by increasing it to 100% fill. You would think that it would actually be more than doubling it, but the outer shell does take a substantial amount, and the thickness right here, this is the width, and this is the height on flat parts, like say I did the bottom, how the bottom layer is going to be 0.8 thick. So if I have 0.2 millimeter layers and my bottom is 0.8 thick, that is 4 bottom layers before it starts the infill process. Okay, that's how the shell works. The same with the walls here. Now, this is actually divided by the width of the nozzle and not my layer height. So most are 0.4 nozzles. This is going to be 2 passes, and to get it exact, it actually does a 3rd pass around the outer edge, as you can see, but it's kind of overlapping to make sure that the width is correct. So you can change that. You can make it thicker. Say I make my shell thickness 3 millimeters and slice it. Depending on the size of the object, if it's less than 6 millimeters, that will also 100% fill it in. But you can see that I now have several layers of shell there, denoted by those green layers in the ring, and still just the one outer layer. Okay, So the other two things that they have in here for settings are support. And support is how you keep flat parts hanging out like this, or what they call overhangs, from drooping when you're printing. And support should come off pretty easily. So we have normal support and tree support. I guess we'll try them both here. I don't know if it's going to support much of this. It's probably going to go, yep, there we go. Okay, so that's attached to the model, and it's holding it up here. If I don't want to touch the model, I can change this to touching build plate, and slice it again, and then anywhere that had support that was touching the build plate, or that was touching the model itself, won't have support. So I pretty much basically turned it off, and we don't want to do that. So we're going to check out the tree support, because tree support is more organic and will flow with the shape. So we should be able to start our support down here on the bed and have it come up and still hold our object without actually being fused to our object on the top and the bottom. Now, tree support does take a little bit longer to slice, but as you can see, none of that residue or connection is going to be left on the bottom side of the model. It is all on the underside of the model here, where it comes into interface. Later on, we'll get into the settings that determines this actual mesh right here, which is your interface mesh. There's generally a small gap between that and the model, large enough so that they will stick, but not large enough so that they will bond, and that is how you release your support from the model. So you're going to need to make sure that you check that video out if you're having issues removing the support that you put on the model. But as you can see, it should print the whole model pretty well. We are now back up to 19 grams of filament, so that's something to keep in mind if your object needs to be supported. Maybe check out and see if there's a better way to orient it so it needs less support, or see if you can do something to minimize the extra plastic you're using in there. So the other setting they have here is adhesion, and this is important. It doesn't really give you the options that we're going to go over in the adhesion section in a later video. It basically just is or isn't. And I believe, if I'm right, it's going to put a brim on the object. Yep, that's correct. Okay, so this layer all the way around, let's go down to the bottom layer here. The inner blue layer is the support, most of it, right? And some of this as well. But the reason this large ring is here is because that's what's called a brim. And a brim is going to make sure that while it's moving really fast up here, the model doesn't start rocking back and forth and loosen itself from the build plate. That's why it's in the adhesion section. It helps the model adhere to the surface that you're printing on by creating a lot of surface tension, sucking on the build plate, basically. It's like one of those sticky window things, right? It's harder to knock the model off because it's harder to get air underneath it accidentally. So that you want to be pretty smooth and flat. That's one of the reasons your first layer is crucial. If your object's not super tall or it doesn't have sharp corners on it, you don't necessarily need a brim. You can just use a skirt, which the only reason to use a skirt, it doesn't actually touch the model. It's just a ring around it out here. But that's a good way to purge the filament and make sure that it's flowing properly before you start your model. That's this ring right here. And it pretty much does that automatically. There is another adhesion type called a raft, which will build a platform with as many layers as you designate all the way. It uses quite a bit more filament. But if you're going to be printing something with a large base, sometimes it's really handy, because if you don't have something for adhesion on models like that, you get corners lifting and things like that. So that is the basic settings. Now that we've gone through this, you should have a little bit better control or idea of what everything is doing. In the next few videos, we are going to go over some of the settings more in depth. In the next video, I'm going to show you where to find a bunch more models that you can get for free, and we'll talk about ways that you can make your own with software that is free. So that's going to be it for this video, guys. Make sure you smash that like button, leave a like, hit the subscribe button. We got plenty more coming, and we will see you in the next one. Technivorous out.